Good morning. I would like to discuss today of the question of what happens when one forgets to recite Birkat HaTorah. The Beis Yosef quotes in the Gemara in Brachos that the Gemara writes that in the name of Shmuel that one who gets up to learn prior to reciting Kriya Shema must recite Birkat HaTorah, needs to make a bracha. After, if they had already recited Kriya Shema, including the brachas of Kriya Shema, so then one would no longer need to make Birkas HaTorah before learning because Shekvar Niftar Be'ahava Rabbah, they have already fulfilled that obligation, fulfilled the need for a bracha on Torah through the paragraph of Ahava Rabbah, the second bracha of Birkas Kriya Shema. And Rashi explains the reason is because in that paragraph of Ahava Rabbah we have Me'ein Birkas HaTorah, he writes. He says that we have a quasi Birkas HaTorah. We say things like the same b'leibenu l'modu l'lamed. We ask Hashem to give in our hearts, to give us the ability to learn, to teach, to love Torah, and that already would satisfy our requirement for Birkas HaTorah. Tosfos writes that there's one additional qualification, and that is the hushashona alatar. That is assuming he learned immediately afterwards. What does that mean? So Shulchan Aruch quotes this as well. Halacha. Shulchan Aruch writes that indeed, if one didn't recite Birkas HaTorah before, then they can fulfill their obligation through reciting this paragraph of Ahava Rabbah. And with this one caveat that Tosfos adds, that as long as one learns it immediately. Now, I already spoke previously about whether one needs to learn after Birkas HaTorah in general, and that's where the practice comes from of saying the Yivarechu Hashem and the Elu Dvarim. But if one forgets and one recites Birkas and one then makes it up by saying Ahava Rabbah, so then it is necessary and essential for sure to learn immediately afterwards. Now there's a interesting point that the Shulchan Aruch also writes. He says miyad bli hefsek. It has to be immediately to learn immediately after this bracha without a hefsek. But we know that bracha is the second bracha of Kriya Shema. So before one's going to have the opportunity to learn, they have to recite Shema, they have to recite Shemona Esrei, they have to finish up davening. So what do you mean without a hefsek? So that's where the Mishnah Berurah quotes from the Levush that since one is already is in the process of finishing davening, that's not considered a hefsek. That's all a continuation. Immediately after davening concludes, that's when one must sit down and learn something. Talking or doing anything otherwise would in fact be problematic. So if one forgets to recite Birkas HaTorah, so one can fulfill that obligation through this Ahava Rabbah on the condition that without any interruption, immediately following davening, they sit down and learn something. It could be even something small, but some piece of Torah. If one forgets and only remembers in the middle of Birkas Kriya Shema. However, the Mishnah Berurah does point out if one remembers in the middle of Psuki de Zimra, then they in fact can stop in the middle of Psuki de Zimra and recite Birkas HaTorah at that point. So if one forgets to recite Birkas HaTorah, remembers the middle of Psuki de Zimra, Mishnah Berurah would suggest stop, say Birkas HaTorah immediately and continue. If one doesn't remember until they're already in the middle of Birkas Kriya Shema, so then they should say it with Ahava Rabbah. There's a discussion whether you need to have explicit kavana to include that Ahava Rabbah as the bracha of Birkas HaTorah, and therefore one should ideally try to. If not, the Mishnah Berurah does seem to assume that would still be sufficient, even if one didn't have explicit kavana, as long as one goes ahead and learns afterwards. That learning shows that also was in that bracha Ahava Rabbah you had intent that should be a Birkas HaTorah. So again, ideally one should say Birkas HaTorah as in the ideal fashion. If one doesn't, if one forgets, so we can follow these protocols, these guidelines for making that up to make sure that we cover our grounds and indeed say Birkas HaTorah so that we're able to learn the rest of the day. Have a fantastic day.